Your Rideshare Millionaire podcast. It is January 30th, 2025, 7 p.m. And this might be the new streaming time. So if you want to be here live, it's going to be on Thursdays at 7 p.m. moving forward until I say otherwise. I'm playing around with some different streaming times. Today's topics will range from, pull it up, give me a second. We're going to be talking about two different lawsuits. The first one is with a woman who was rejected from a ride because of her size. I haven't even watched the video myself yet, so I'm going to watch it for the first time with you guys. And then I'm going to approach this from multiple different angles. I'm going to approach it from what the driver should have done if he did something wrong, what the passenger should have done if she did something wrong, and what I would do, and what's understandable, right? The other lawsuit that we'll be talking about is from Colorado, where Uber has literally sued the state of Colorado. We're going to talk about why they're doing that and whose side I'm on, right? Because I'm not always on the driver's side with certain things. I'm not always on Uber's side with certain things. So we'll see what that looks like. We're also going to be talking about how Uber is working on a price lock feature for passengers that could affect drivers. It's something that drivers should be aware of. They're actually copying something else that Lyft did, which is weird. Usually Lyft is the one copying Uber. And then we're going to talk about self-driving cars. A lot has happened in just the last 7 days. Waymo has some stuff that you need to know about. Tesla has some stuff that you need to know about. And then we're also going to shift from self-driving cars to electric cars. I know a lot of you like to know what's going on in the electric world because sometimes we have to make very large purchasing decisions, and having more information is always better than not having it at all. So we'll talk about Teslas, why it's so expensive to repair. We'll talk about some of the plans Tesla has, which if you're in the market for buying a car, might make you want to wait a little bit. And then we'll end up by talking about how drivers were affected in LA during the wildfires and what Uber did or didn't do to help them. The first thing we're going to talk about is indeed the rapper. Let me go and find that video.
This Lyft.
Give me a second, guys. I should have had this ready. I'm trying to find the actual video, but I'm struggling. I'm only finding people's videos of the video. Here we go. I found it. All right. Okay, so here it is. It's going to bring us to TikTok, unfortunately.
Hi! Can I ask what's happening?
Sorry?
Can I ask what's
This is not
happening?
it.
Can you ask what's...
Be
Here we
see
go.
of my size.
What you saying?
Yeah, I got no space in my car is small.
I can fit in this car.
No, believe me, you can.
Yes, I can.
Believe me. So, I'm sorry.
What I'm gonna do about my money?
I'm gonna.
All right, the volume's a little low. That's not on me. It's just the video. So pretty much it's just, I guess he already rejected her and that's when she decided to start recording. And he's just saying that he can't accept her in the car. And I'm not sure if he said why.
You're not gonna be charged.
So you telling me I can't get in the lift because I can't fit in your car?
Yeah, so he said he told her you can't get in the lift because she can't fit in the car.
Yeah, you need to order a bigger car.
What make you think I can't fit in the car?
So then he says he needs to order a bigger car, probably an XL. And she asked him what makes him think that she can't fit in the car.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What makes you think I can't fit in this car?
Because the car is small in the back. Believe
My best friend has a Benz that's newer than this that I can fit in. That's the same size.
She said, my best friend has a Benz that's newer than this that I can fit in. Not sure why that comparison was made, but okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't.
So you really telling me I'm too big to get in your car? So I gotta order another lift.
Yeah. And to be more specific with you, I got very tired tires.
What I got to do with your tires?
Okay, so now he's blaming the tires. I guess she's asking for clarification here. And he clarified, I guess. I wouldn't have let this conversation go on that long. But I guess she said, she asked why you feel that way. And he got specific. He said, you know, my tires, he would know more than she would about his tires. It could be very possible that he has patched tires. But, you know, if you have a patched tire and it puts you in a position where you're not comfortable picking people up, you should probably get a real tire.
Yeah, and you have no space.
How you know I don't have no space?
Yeah, I got no space in the back. Believe me.
How do you know I don't have no space?
Because I tried before.
See, this conversation is longer than I'm gonna say what I would have done once the video is over.
Huh?
Because I've been in this situation.
So every big person you turn down because they can't fit in your car?
Yeah, because they need to order the Uber XL. It's called.
No, I don't never have to order an Uber XL.
Then I'm really sorry.
What's your name?
Abraham Carter.
Okay. Nope.
So right off the bat, I want to say I don't think he's being rude, or at least not intentionally rude. I do think there's some things he could have done better, which we'll talk about in a second. All right, so that's it. That's the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is I would not have said why, right? Let's just start with that. I would not have said why I can't take this passenger. You should have lied, right? To protect yourself and to not offend other people. There are other ways you could have gone about this. After watching this video for the first time, I don't feel like he was intentionally trying to be mean. I feel like he didn't have the chance to really think through how this conversation was going. And if there's a reason why you don't want to take someone, you don't owe them an explanation, especially as an independent contractor. You let them assume why you cancel. Or if you want to lie, I think that's better than telling the truth here. If you want to say, oh man, my wife just called me, I got to cancel this ride, you go ahead and cancel, right? I don't want to say he was shaming her, but you don't want to put a passenger in a position to feel shamed, right? So we'll start there. So one, I believe that it is okay for him to have not wanted to take that ride. There's titles out there talking about discrimination, and I don't think this fits, right? It's very possible that someone does discriminate against large people, but I think there are some reality checkpoints that we have to consider when looking at this, right? It's like the average car is able to take, let me Google it, right? So I don't want you guys thinking I'm making things up. So let's go ahead and look it up. What? I'm gonna put my car in. I'm not quite sure what car he had. What is the average passenger carrying capacity for a Prius? All right, so it told me how many people. I want to know in pounds. So it says the average carrying capacity for a Toyota Prius is roughly 1,000 pounds. This is based off of the fact that a Prius can seat 5 people and a typical adult weighs around 150 to 200 pounds, meaning the total passenger weight could reach around 1,000 pounds, right? So this is just an estimate and it's from AI, so take it with a grain of salt if you want. And according to her, people have gone through her Instagram and they have found that she weighs about 500 pounds, which that's only half of the carrying capacity. But hold on, there's a little more to it, right? So I'm here with my Google AI, and I'm gonna ask, does it matter how much weight is in one seat if the total carrying capacity is 1,000 pounds for 5 people? So it says it doesn't matter how the weight is distributed in individual seats as long as the total weight of all 5 people does not exceed 1,000 pounds. The carrying capacity is at a limit on total weight, not individual weight. For example, one weight could weigh 400 pounds and the other 4 could weigh 150 pounds each, and the total weight would still be within the limit. So then let's ask, would it have a different effect on the shocks? So it says, yes, the distribution of weight can have an effect on the shocks of a vehicle, even if the total weight is within the carrying capacity, okay? Uneven distribution, if the weight is concentrated in one area of the vehicle, such as the rear axle, it can put more stress on the shocks in that area. This can lead to premature wear and tear or even damages to the shocks. And unfortunately, drivers within rideshare aren't the best at being up to date with their car, right? Rideshare, depending on where you live, can pay pretty well. But life's getting more expensive. People are taking shortcuts on their car maintenance or just not doing it at all. Most people who become rideshare drivers do so out of need and not because of necessity, or they do so out of necessity, not because of want. So they're not always in the financial position to keep their car in tip-top shape. So I don't blame him for protecting his financial investment, his car, his lifeline, from potential damage because of weight. And that's real. It's unfortunate, but it's real. That's 500 pounds is not an average scenario for one person sitting in one section of your car. That's just the reality of what it is. It continues to say that the center of gravity of the vehicle to the point where the weight is evenly distributed. If the weight is not evenly distributed, the center of gravity can shift, right? We can feel that shift in the car. It could become a safety thing. So like there's valid reasons why someone wouldn't want to take someone that heavy. Me personally, I would have taken her, right? I'm not that concerned. I do know, or I have experienced an area in town where when I park right beside the curb and I open the door and passengers get in, the car sinks to the point where the car door is now pressed against the sidewalk because the sidewalk is a little high. And, like that could damage my car. Now, I don't know if that's what he was specifically worried about, but that's something that I have to be worried about when a bunch of people are getting into my car. And the way I worry about it is I just move my car over. So, but I don't want to dismiss my overall point by saying just because I would have taken her, pretty much just to avoid conflict, especially if it's not a far ride, doesn't mean that he should have. He could have. He didn't want to. That's well within his right. I do not consider his reasoning to be discrimination. He sounds like a nice guy, probably too nice. He's over explaining. I'm really big on de-escalating situations. And I would have never even told her that the weight is the reason why she can't get into the car. I'd feel bad for saying it, even if I thought it. But if I was legitimately trying to protect something, like my car, I would have just left or lied. I probably wouldn't have lied. I probably would have just left. But let's see what the lawsuits surrounding this are saying and what the news and what general society is saying about this. So this is from the New York Post. It says plus size rapper who calls herself a BBW sues Lyft after driver said she couldn't fit in his car. This was published on January 28th, so 2 days ago. Let's see what the news is just saying about it.
They're fuming after a Lyft driver allegedly denied her a ride because of her size. And Fox 2's Jessica Dubnik is live in Detroit with this story. And my goodness, tell us how this all unfolded here, Jessica.
Well, it all unfolded on video. Deja Banlane whipped out her phone when this all happened. Now, the Lyft driver, he was kind enough and apologetic, but refused her a ride and said that she would not fit and that her weight couldn't be.
It's like I said earlier, when I watched that video with you guys, that was my first time watching it. And I felt, right, the energy he was putting off, that he wasn't trying to be mean. So it looks like she agrees with me here, which makes me feel good.
Be handled by his tires. Now she's filing a lawsuit.
Have you been in cars that size before?
Yes, I have. I've been in cars smarter than that, you know.
Deja Blanding tells us she was just trying to get to a Detroit Lions watch party this month when her Lyft rolled up.
As I'm walking, I see him like making faces or whatever. I'm like, oh man.
She already knew.
I can fit in this car.
No, believe me, you can.
Yes, I can.
Believe
If she's walking to the car and he's making faces and she already knows what's about to happen, that means that she's used to dealing with this, which I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just making an observation.
He told her there's not enough room in his car.
The kicker part was when he started to talk about his tires. You know, I feel like that was a slap in the face. That was like my tires, you know, like.
The driver said his tires could not handle her weight.
For every big person you turn down because they can't fit in your car?
Yeah, because they need to order the Uber XL.
You know what? I don't never have to order Uber XL.
He apologized.
So you guys who are in chat, you guys let me know. Do you think she should, or one, should Lyft have a weight limit for passengers, right? Should there be a total, or should we like just go for a car? Should it be on per person basis? They probably will never do that. And then should Lyft like suggest people order certain ride types based off of their size? Like, I don't think Lyft will ever do this from a PR perspective, but if this woman wins her lawsuit, what does that conversation between Lyft and drivers look like moving forward, right? Are they going to start sending us messages saying, hey, we can't decline rides based off of people's size? I don't see that going over very well in the community. Does that really count as discrimination? Well, I guess if she wins the lawsuit, it does. So maybe they'll probably end up settling. Even if they end up settling, what does that say to drivers, right? So I find Lyft to be in a very tricky predicament right now. And we'll definitely be paying attention to this lawsuit.
Apologized, canceled the ride, and left her there. The rapper says she's pretty tough. Dank Demoss, as she's known at the mic, is crushed by the whole situation.
I just want them to know, like, it really hurt my feelings.
It looks like Lyft might be hurting pretty soon, too.
I knew it was illegal, and I knew that it was wrong.
Her attorneys, John Marco and Zach Runyon, say weight is a protected characteristic in Michigan by law.
It would be no different than a driver pulling up and saying...
Okay, I want to look at that for a second. It says weight is a protected characteristic in Michigan. Let's see. Weight. As far as these lawyers go, I assume they saw the video that she posted. It probably went viral, and they were like, "Payday." That's it. And guess what? If she wins the lawsuit, that the high insurance that Lyft always takes from us, that's where that money goes. So like their liability insurance, in addition to like our car insurance, like that's what pays that stuff out. So we as drivers are going to have to like be held responsible indirectly if they win this lawsuit. Even if they lose a lawsuit, just the paying of the lawyers, like that all goes into how much Lyft decides to pay us. So it says Michigan's Elliot Larson Civil Rights Act of 1976 protects people from weight discrimination in jobs, education, housing, and public services. Does this count for weight discrimination? Or should it count for weight discrimination? This makes Michigan the only state in the United States with a law that explicitly protects people from weight discrimination. Wow. Wow. So it looks like in Michigan, if you're an Uber or Lyft driver, it is not in your best interest to tell someone they cannot get into your car because of their weight. This is the only state where that counts as discrimination. Interesting. Trying to zoom in on this PDF and it's not letting me. All right, so this is a little PDF that covers body size anti-discrimination law. It says Michigan is the only state in the country with a law banning body size discrimination by making height and weight a protected class in the state's civil rights lawsuit. All right, so it's going to be a civil court. Since the law has been implemented, how has Michigan dealt with discrimination complaints? This doesn't seem too interesting. Yeah, it's just not much here. We'll go back to the article.
Saying, I don't want to have black people in my car, or I don't want to have Christian.
Runyon say weight is a protected characteristic in Michigan by law.
It would be no different than a driver pulling up and saying, I don't want to have black people in my car, or I don't want to have Christians in my car or Muslims in my car. It's the same. Under the law, it's the same.
I don't think it's the same. He can go out and say that under the law it's the same, and maybe the law should be challenged. But I do not think rejecting someone because they are black is the same as, or always the same as, rejecting someone because they are overweight. I think that there are scenarios in which people can reject people based off of their weight in like a discriminatory form. But I also believe that people can be rejected for their weight for non-discriminatory reasons, right? Roller coasters have weight limits and height limits. So technically, right, if we're going by this Michigan law, unless there's like a specific exemption there, anytime you go to a theme park that tells you can't go on a certain ride because of your weight, that should constitute as legal discrimination, which is not the same as saying that because you are black or because you are Muslim, you can't get into my car. Those are different things. So no, I don't accept that they are the same thing. It might be legally speaking, but then I would say that law is there's a reason why it's the only one in the nation, right? I think that we have to be careful about confusing being politically correct with like reality. Like there are actual things, actual restrictions that is going to cause someone who might be too small or too big not to be able to do. And like that's not, it's not because we think it's bad that you are that. It's because you are that, and this bad thing can happen as a result. So I think there's like some gray area. I don't even think it's gray. I think it's black and white, and they've carved out a gray and black area and made it home. It's weird. It's really weird.
The lawsuit is filed. Since she posted the encounter on social media, other full-figured folks have reached out saying the same thing happened to them.
I can fit in this car.
No, believe me, you can.
Yes, I can. I really want people to see like what we go through as bigger people,
We did reach out to Lyft. They did not get back with us in time for this story. Now, Lyft, Uber, those rideshare companies.
I do think Lyft has put out a statement, and we'll look for it in a second once we go through this article.
They can refuse passengers based on a perceived security threat, but according to Deja's attorneys, you cannot discriminate based on someone's weight. It's very clear in that cell phone video. That is why he denied her ride. Reporting live on Detroit's West Side, Jessica Dupnack on The Edge.
So I do like that Lyft spoke up. They said, hey, drivers can reject rides based off of security, right? That could be them saving their own butt. That could be them actually speaking the truth. That could be them taking the side of the driver, which I appreciate that. But as the reporter just said, we're gonna have to watch how this shakes out in court. We're gonna have to see if they believe that anytime a person is rejected, regardless of the reason, that it equates to discrimination if it's their weight, right? Or are there scenarios in which preventing someone from doing something because of their weight isn't discrimination, but in fact, a security precaution? So we're going to have to pay attention to this and see where it goes. And I'm very curious to see where it ends up. So Dank Demoss, which is her rapper name, who has previously disclosed that she weighs nearly 489 pounds. She claims the rejection unfolded earlier this month in Detroit when the Lyft driver rolled up his Mercedes-Benz sedan and immediately locked his doors. Okay, so he's driving a Mercedes-Benz and it's a sedan, right? At minimum, she should order like a Comfort, right? I think that would have been a better bet. She says, I can fit in the car. The rapper, who also goes by Deja Blanding, could be heard saying in a video she posted on social media January 18th. Believe me, you can't, the driver shot back, adding later that there was no room in the back and his tires wouldn't be able to handle the weight. The driver, who identified himself as Abraham in the now viral clip, was filmed apologizing to Demoss, but maintaining that he was canceling the ride and telling her she should order an XL vehicle. So as long as the driver canceled the ride before that 5-minute wait period, she should get her money back. I know she asked in the video what would happen. It might not have been immediately, but typically you get your money back. She says, I've been in this situation before. Demoss responded, so every big person you turn down because they can't fit in your car. Demoss, who describes herself on Instagram as a paid fat queen, spelled P-H-A-T, and declared in one post last year that she weighed 554 pounds, so I'm guessing she lost some weight, slapped Lyft with the lawsuit this week. She later updated fans that she weighs 489 pounds. Shout outs to you. That's big. You lost like 10% of your weight. That's huge. I've been in cars smaller than that, she told Fox 2 after the suit was filled. I just want them to know that it hurts my feelings. Meanwhile, her video of the exchange had racked up more than 340,000 views on TikTok as of Tuesday. Like, this is one of the most talked about things in the news cycle right now. So, all right, here's the Lyft response. A Lyft spokesperson told the Post that the company couldn't comment on specific incidents caught up in litigation, but they condemned discrimination. So it seems like they walked back on what they said before, that drivers are allowed to do X, Y, and Z, are allowed to cancel for safety reasons, but that they condemn discrimination. But, you know, typical corporation talk. Lyft unequivocally condemns all forms of discrimination. We believe in a community where everyone is treated with equal respect and mutual kindness. Our community guidelines in terms of service explicitly prohibit harassment or discrimination. I don't think he was harassing. As far as their law goes, it could be discrimination, maybe. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes to next. And I really do want to see where it goes to next. All right, so we're going to check out the comments before we move on to the next lawsuit. So first we have Ron. Ron asked me, how is it going? It's going pretty well. It's been a little slow in our market. Ron and I have the same market. It's been a little slow. I've also taken most of January off, but I'm ready to get back into the motion. I'm excited for Valentine's Day and I'm excited for March. Make sure you're ready for March. Ron says she's having a Norbit dilemma. I remember watching Norbit. I don't remember the general plot. I know you're talking about Rasputia, but I just don't remember the general plot. Ron says, yeah, I agree, considering the distance of the ride. So yeah, so I said that if this was a 2-hour ride, I don't think I would take it. It becomes a real problem, right? You hit a wrong pothole, it becomes a real problem. If it's just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, I'm doing it. I'm weighing, is this confrontation? Is what could happen from me having a confrontation with this passenger worth not taking it? And the longer the ride is, the less likely I am to take it as a result. So, you know, some of that can factor into it as well. Ron says if she wasn't given a chance to see if she could fit, then she has a viable lawsuit. Yeah, it is viable. I think that it'll be interesting, right? If she wins this court case, I'm gonna look into what happens when someone wants to ride on a roller coaster and they're rejected because of their weight. Like, is this how does that work? Like, that's not discrimination. Well, depending on who you ask or what law you look at, but I think there's some gray area here, and I'm looking to see what this court case does to that gray area. Ron says, unfortunately, us drivers will be ordered not to refuse rides based on shape, size. We'll see. I know that Lyft constantly sends messages out about how we're supposed to be taking pets. I think that's one of the bigger things they deal with. So we'll see if this becomes a thing. Ron says, I hate attorneys using race card as reference. I didn't like it. It was pretty dirty and it doesn't feel the same to me, but I understand that he's just painting broad strokes over this law that they have, and he's just doing what attorneys do. He might even disagree with it personally, but he looked at the situation, said payday, and I can work with this law to make this happen, you know? Ron says, next thing is a lawsuit based off of refusal due to age. I see what you're saying. You're saying that if someone is not 18 or over, they can't legally commit to a contract, and you deny service to them because of their age, that would be considered discrimination. That could happen. I don't think that someone could sue for it, but I think that most of the world wouldn't be on their side with that. But that's something that could happen. You're right. It's a slippery slope territory. Ron Plunkett says, isn't most Benz as a comfort car or just luxury? I guess so it's probably not comfort. It depends on what determines if something's comfort is how many inches, I don't know the specific inches, but how many inches of legroom there are in the back. And that's with Lyft. I don't know about Uber. You could say that a specific Benz might qualify for black, but again, that doesn't mean it's comfort, right? It's about how much size is in there. So I know that there are Benz that have very small back seats. Like, even like I previously had an Audi. I didn't drive the Audi on Lyft, but I wouldn't, because the A4 just doesn't have the legroom that I definitely don't think she fits into an A4. Maybe I'll have to push the seat all the way up and all the way forward. But like, if I had like 3 normal passengers and her, she definitely doesn't fit there, like, at all. She could fit my Prius. My Prius is pretty good on room though. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next topic. And this one's important to me. I've talked about this lawsuit before. I looked it up recently, 10 months ago. I brought it up, and it's about Colorado. You guys know that I don't agree with all the drivers out there. There are times where drivers want something, and there have been times where I've said, you don't really want this thing, because once it's enacted, like, it's not going to look like how you think it is. Like Minnesota, right? People in Minnesota wanted that wage change. And since the very beginning, I was against it, right? Not because I don't want them to make more money, but because I actually believe that if they implemented a minimum wage, that it would actually hurt them more than it would help them. And that's exactly what has happened. Now, with this, it was a very simple change. I support it because it allowed us to identify some problems so that we could fix them. Colorado introduced a bill, a transparency bill, where both passengers and the drivers would be able to see how much the passenger paid, how much the drivers make, and how much Uber is taking from it. I love it. That is what I've been asking for so long, because I believe, right, that there are certain issues that drivers and Uber can team up with to fight. For example, the rising cost of insurance. If the cost of insurance is being increased because of state laws or federal requirements, we can join hands with Uber for that one battle and do something about it, right? If we're able to lower insurance costs, Uber wins, we win. Hopefully, hopefully they don't keep taking that money from us, but they share that with us, right? And sometimes, like, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And sometimes they're not, right? I'm not saying we get into bed with Uber. I am saying that if we have that transparency, it'll allow us to know which battles are actually worth fighting, right? Now, I'm going to just read from the article and we'll talk about why Uber is suing Colorado. So this is from Westworld. It says Uber sues to block Colorado's new rideshare pay transparency law. Uber argues that the two laws, slated to take effect in February, which is in 2 days or a day and a half, contradict the company's right to freedom of expression. Rules designed to give more transparency. You know what, guys? I'm sorry. I got to use the bathroom. And I'm going to go do that. And I'll be right back. I've returned. Sorry about that. I try to drink a lot of water to make sure I'm hydrated. But then I drink too much sometimes. All right, I can focus now. Perfect. All right, it says rules designed to give more transparency to rideshare drivers in Colorado are meant to kick in at the beginning of February, but Uber has filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court seeking to declare them unconstitutional. Under two new state laws, Senate Bill 24075 and House Bill 241129, gig driving companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash must disclose to drivers and passengers on a single screen the total amount a rider paid before the tip, the amount that went to the driver, and the amount of the tip after a driver completes a given trip. I like it. I didn't even realize it was doing all of that, but it's important for the passenger to be able to see how much they tipped and how much of the tip the driver got, and to display it, because, and I'm not making this up, Uber has been found to be stealing tips, to be shaving tips. Like, there's articles out there that you can see. Let me co-sign it real quick. Uber lawsuit stolen tips. It says, according to the order approving settlement, not only will Uber have to pay over $300,000 to the users that were tricked into believing the gratuities were solely for the drivers, but Uber will also have to pay for the class action attorney's fees separately. So it's been declared, found legally, that Uber was illegally taking people's tips. So I'm not making things up here. The laws also require that when a driver is offered a trip, rideshare apps must disclose the total distance and time a trip is expected to cover. We have that in certain areas, but there's no law forcing this, except this, right? Except this one. And I think this is okay. And I have no issues with this, and I don't see what the problem is, right? There's like let me say this, right? I'm not so oblivious to the fact that Uber needs to make money, drivers need to make money, and passengers need to save money, right? I'm not oblivious to those three things. And when it comes to certain parameters within those three, they're going to tug against each other, right? So I'm not stupid to that. I know that Uber needs to make money, and I know that drivers need to make money. There is no part of this bill that is directly affecting that, right? There's Uber doesn't lose anything. Well, they lose something, right? They don't lose financially by telling the independent contractor that they're working with how long a ride is going to be. That information should be there, right? So I'm okay with this. No complaints here. It says on January 11th, Uber filed a lawsuit against Scott Moss, director of the Colorado Division of Labor and Employment, and Jared Polis, governor of Colorado, charging that those laws passed last May by the Colorado legislature are illegal and should be overturned. This is crazy, right? Uber is trying to prevent a bill that was passed last May. It's a long time ago. And they're waiting a few days before it's supposed to be enacted to stop it. Maybe this has something to do with the new administration. Maybe they're expecting some help from them, right? That could be real, but it feels slimy. It feels real slimy. Okay, so apparently Colorado state legislature cannot be sued. So it says lawsuit, right? Am I making things up here? Uber sues to block Colorado. Yeah, they sued to block it, but they're saying that it can't be sued. I don't quite know what that means. Maybe because, I don't know. Let's keep reading and find out. It says Uber lawsuit claims that the regulations unconstitutionally compel Uber to speak in a way that contradicts the company's right to freedom of expression. This is insane. First of all, I want to talk about the broader idea that companies are protected under, what is it, the First Amendment, right? I don't want to misspeak here. I'm also not going to pretend like I know all the amendments. So, First Amendment. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects freedom of speech. So I was right. I don't think corporations should fall under this. I think this is for people, and corporations are people, right? And I know that they use this to protect corporations being able to give money to politicians, right? As a form of free speech. I think that should go away too. But that's deeper into politics, not really rideshare related. I don't think that Uber, like if Uber wants to sue because they feel like they shouldn't have to do this, fine. If you're going to say it's against your constitutional right of freedom of expression, as a corporation, you shouldn't have any of that. Like I don't. That's not the merit in which I think that this case should be had, right? If Uber's argument is we're being forced to share information that other people don't have to share, fine, do that. Talk about that. Don't come here and use the thing that is like sacred to America as a like protection that shouldn't even qualify for you. And it might, right? They can use this and maybe they'll win. Maybe they won't. Hopefully they don't. Right? I'm just not a fan of it. So to continue, it says, even under the most generous reading, they do not further any legitimate state interests. The lawsuit says of the two new laws, where novel regulation infringes upon the First Amendment's right of free speech, and the government cannot meet its burden under the law to justify such infringement, as is the case here, then the law must give way to Uber's constitutional rights. Ugh, so slimy. So slimy. Uber is asking a district court judge to temporarily prevent the laws from going into effect and to declare both the state laws federally unconstitutional. Can a district court judge say that it's federally unconstitutional? They're trying to make it so that no one implements this anywhere, not just Colorado. It says both laws were passed after years of advocacy from gig drivers. led by Colorado Independent Drivers United, a union of rideshare workers vying for better conditions in Colorado. Gig drivers successfully pushed for transparency on driver pay, trip distance, and driver deactivations, all of which are part of the new laws. Uber's lawsuit does not mention the driver deactivation portion, but focuses on upcoming regulations requiring trip distance and driver pay disclosures to customers and riders. So part of the new law is that there are better protections for driver deactivation, which Uber has been improving. And I'm not going to give them credit because they were forced to improve it through a lawsuit from New York, right? So, and they just applied it nationwide, which is cool. So I guess they're not as concerned about that part of it. And this law went into effect before that change. So it makes sense why they're not really focused on that part because they're already doing that part. The two laws were very similar, but they are split between transportation network companies, which move people, and delivery network companies, which move items or food, right? So that's why there are two different bills. The lawsuit is a blatant attempt by Uber to dodge accountability and continue exploiting both its drivers and its customers. Anthony Sorozzo, president of Communications Workers of America Local 7777, the union overseeing CIDU, says in a statement, Colorado passed these laws after months of negotiation and compromise, and Uber's last-minute legal maneuvering is a slap in the face to the democratic process. I had the pleasure of listening to Rideshare Rodeo. He's based in Colorado. He's been very involved with this bill. He came out with a podcast episode 3 days ago. It was fantastic. He actually spoke with one of the ladies who like authored the bill, I guess, right? And I learned a lot from it. And she noted that they didn't just put this bill out without Uber knowing about it. There was constant back and forth between the two over what's okay, what's not okay, right? This bill was even shot down at first. And they came back to the table and worked on it. So months later, almost a year later, we have Uber suddenly disagreeing with it. Like something's up, right? Either they feel confident that they can get this overturned by appealing it to a higher level, and they were just biding their time to see who the president might be, or they actually believe like this is going to do something, right? And I'm just not sure. But make sure you check this out, right? He brings on several different people, where you see Mike drops in here, some guy who I don't know, Rideshare Professor. He even brings on Sergio, right? So go check that. Like, it's his YouTube channel is called Rideshare Rodeo. Check out that podcast. It's pretty good. But let's jump back into what this news article is saying. So it says drivers say that rideshare companies have taken a higher percentage of the fares paid by riders over the years. When the Cross-Institutional Workers Algorithm Observatory examined data from 13,000 gig drivers in Colorado, the academic organization found that only 14% of what customers pay go to drivers. That sounds real low. Real low. I'd want to see their study. I don't think it's that bad. And if it is actually that bad, either customers are getting ripped off or drivers are truly not making any money. So like something is off here. And like when people who don't do rideshare do studies about rideshare, they overlook things. But 14% is real low. The observatory also discovered that base pay for Colorado drivers decreased from about $1.50 per mile in 2019 to around 50 cents per mile in 2024. That's a huge difference, right? This sounds about right. $1.50, 2019, that sounds about right. To drop to 50 cents per mile, I hope that's not the case. For their sake, right? For the driver's sake, I hope people in Colorado aren't making 50 cents a mile. If you are, it's time to quit. It's time to find something else. This is not sustainable if that's what you're making per mile. Uber says the company is trying to increase transparency on earnings, service fees, and other operational costs, but argues that ham-fisted regulations on speech are not conducive to that goal. See, that's the shady part, right? I agree that Uber has made strides to be more transparent. But I also believe that they're being transparent in a way that benefits them, right? They're showing us how much is going to insurance, because they want us to fight insurance. But if they have to show everything, including to the passengers, it's different. Showing drivers how much passengers paid is one thing, right? If you want to upset your driver base, you're not worried because you churn and burn. You'll get other drivers. Now with passengers, if passengers feel like you're cheating them, it can make a passenger go say, hey, I see that I paid $30 for this ride. And I see that you're only getting $10 for this ride. Why don't I just give you that money and stop using Uber as a middleman, right? And who's to say that that's how it goes? But I think that's what Uber is worried about. They're worried about customer backlash from seeing how much of their money isn't going to the drivers. And that puts drivers in a position to better negotiate or to better complain to Uber about the pay discrepancy, right? In a way that's beneficial to them. So earlier, before we started talking about this, I said, I think there is a natural push and pull between how much people make and how much people want to pay them, right? Between Uber, the customer, and the driver. And I think that this transparency bill puts everything out on the table, right? So that all sides can actually see what's happening and push and pull accordingly. And I support this, right? I support this transparency, right? I don't think that it should be protected. I hope that whichever judge is overseeing this case does not side with Uber, because I want to see. I want that information to look at. I want that information to come to my own conclusions, and I want other people to have that information to come to their own conclusions too. So continue saying, we warned the legislature that the bill would have unintended consequences and have filed this lawsuit as the last resort. Uber said in a statement through spokesperson Stephanie Sass, not only would this law lead to more unsafe and distracted driving, it would increase confusion, reinforcing inaccurate perceptions about how much of the fare Uber actually takes. All right. that I'm getting worked up. I'm getting worked up here. I'm going to reread it. Not only would this law lead to more unsafe and distracted driving, right? Let's stop there for a second, because these two different statements are getting me so heated for different reasons. I can't do both at once. So the first one, not only would this law lead to more unsafe and distracted driving, where is the distraction coming from? Is Uber out of their minds? Like, do they think that I'm going to be in my car? Like, hold on. I can't even comprehend a situation in which a driver will be distracted, because this is such a reach. It's such a reach. What's the expectation here? That in the middle of a ride or after I drop a passenger off, I'm going to start driving while looking at how much I paid? You know what? Right now, if you want to see how much a passenger paid, to the best of my knowledge, I think you have to go online. I don't think you can do it in the app, which that to me is a problem, right? So they're kind of obscuring it, hiding it. And I think they're trying to say that they want to protect that model. And their reason for that is so that drivers aren't looking at it while they're driving. Come on. There is so much that the Uber app does right now to distract drivers. Right? What is that feature called? Where when you're driving with a passenger in your car, it's just showing you other rides. You know how annoying and distracting that is? I don't know what street I need to make a right turn on, because at the moment I need to make that turn, you're showing me the trip radar for the next ride. If you don't think that's distracting, but you think this would be distracting, it really shows that Uber doesn't have much ground to stand on. They're pulling things literally out of their tailpipe. Trying real hard not to curse. They're pulling things out of their tailpipe. And I'm proud of myself because I made a car analogy on the spot. So that's the first issue, right? The second issue, they say, reinforcing inaccurate perceptions about how much of the fare Uber actually takes. Listen, what is inaccurate, right? If you have to tell people how much Uber actually takes, right? Uber takes this, percentage of that goes to insurance, percentage of that goes to driver. Why would that be inaccurate? How would telling the truth cause inaccurate perceptions, right? That doesn't make any sense. If you're worried about the truth being inaccurate, then find a way to explain it in a way that is accurate. The problem here is it seems like Uber's been lying for so long, they don't know that. Nah, they do know. This is a Hail Mary play. The more I read into this, it just feels like a Hail Mary play. Uber has tried everything. It feels like they're more afraid of being transparent than they are paying drivers more, right? We've seen Uber and Lyft bend to some of these minimum pay laws more easily than they're bending to this transparency bill, right? So I want it all out there. I don't think, like, if you had asked me a month ago, 2 weeks ago, that Uber would try harder to hide their percentage splits than to pay drivers more, I would have never guessed that they would have tried harder to hide percentage splits. That's insane. It's absolutely insane. So it says the stated goal of Colorado's new rideshare legislation is to provide information to drivers and riders about where fares really go, but Uber alleges that the intended effect of the law is to create the perception that Uber greedily takes every dollar that doesn't go directly to the driver in profit. Okay, I can kind of understand this, right? Here's a scenario in which I understand it. On the screen, Uber is showing passengers what goes to the driver, what comes from the passenger, and what doesn't go to the driver, right? So I can understand, right? There are fees, taxes, insurance that don't go directly to Uber that Uber has to deal with. Fine. The solution isn't to make it more obscure, right? The solution is to be even more clear. Instead of showing what goes to the driver and what goes to Uber, you show this goes to driver, this goes to the government, this goes to insurance companies because it's mandated, this goes to Uber. That's not hard. You can't argue that being transparent is going to confuse people unless your level of transparency is meant to confuse people, right? Even if the law says all Uber has to do is show how much goes to the driver and how much goes to Uber, Uber can take it a step further to clarify what percentage of the things that Uber takes that doesn't go towards Uber's bottom line, like insurance or taxes. In fact, I think that if certain markets have high taxes, have high airport fees, it's in Uber's best interest to show that to the driver, to show that to the passenger, right? If insurance is as high as Uber is saying it is, it's in Uber's best interest to show that to the passenger, to show that to the driver, right? And do it in a way that's malicious. Be like, hey, the government is forcing us to have $1 million liability policy for these drivers. And because it's a forced law that we have to comply with, they're overcharging us compared to literally every other entity, like taxi companies that have to have this too, right? And Uber, I have to pull it up now. I have to. So Uber sent this email to a passenger once about insurance. I'm going to read to you the email, because a lot of what I'm saying right now is going to sound like I'm making assumptions. And I want to be very clear that I'm not making assumptions, right? When Uber has been on a campaign to convince, hold on, I have to download this, to convince drivers that part of the issue of why you're not getting paid as much is because of insurance. And I've said that for a very long time, that insurance is part of the problem. Still looking it up. Just give me a second. It's on my other email account, so I have to sign in. All right, I'm going to try for another 20 seconds, and if I can't quickly do it... Oh, here it is. Found it. Boom. Okay. All right, perfect. Okay. All right, so this is an email that was sent to one of our viewers called Diego. His name is Diego. Oh, I said it like that. And he's in Florida. So the email reads, this is from Uber directly to him. Did you know that all 50 states, including Florida, require commercial auto liability insurance in addition to personal auto insurance for you to earn money driving on platforms like Uber? These important laws help keep everyone on the road safe, which is why Uber maintains this commercial insurance on your behalf so you don't have to pay for your own. That's nice of you. It continues by saying, but Florida's commercial insurance coverage requirements for TNC rideshare platforms like Uber are significantly higher than those for nearly every other car on the road, including taxis, right? So I just said that. I am not making that up. This is from that email. It says, in fact, in Florida, on average, nearly 20% of the total price riders pay goes towards government mandated commercial insurance, right? 20% of what the riders pay is significantly more than 20% of what the drivers receive, right? So if I don't know what the math shakedown would be, but if I can try to walk through it mentally, if rider pays $100, then $20 of that is going to insurance. So that leaves $80 left, right? Let's say Uber's taking 50%. So that's 40 and they're giving the driver 40, if that much, right? So that would be, so that $20 of insurance is 50% of $40 that the driver received. So in the case of $100, 20% of what a passenger pays is going towards insurance. That works out to a take rate from the driver of 50%, right? That's not even including the insurance. Of course, I'm pulling numbers out my butt, and the actual parameters of what it would look like would be different. But it was interesting that Uber chose to talk about how much the passenger pays instead of how much the driver received when talking to a driver, right? That's goes into how I believe there are times where when Uber is trying to be transparent, it's to cause more confusion, which is why they don't know what being truly transparent really looks like, because it causes confusion. They think it'll cause them confusion because that's how they use it, right? They use transparency as a tool to cause confusion. So when they are requested to being truly transparent, they believe that the government is using it as a tool to cause confusion for Uber. That's because Uber's a shady company. So it says at Uber, we stand for safety and feel strongly that every ride should be covered. We're committed to doing so, whatever, right? So what I do like about this email that Uber sent is that they are trying to unify drivers on a common pain point, which is forced insurance, right? And I think that's okay, right? I said it earlier. I think that this is one of those issues we should join forces with. So I'm not against that. I think that's okay. But I also, we have to be careful, right? Enemy of your enemy is your friend, but Uber is doing this for themselves. It's not for us. So, that's I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that. I don't want you guys thinking I'm making things up and talking up my tailpipe. I'm gonna coin that. If you hear anyone else say that, any of these gig tubers say that, just know it started here. I said it first. And it's okay. You guys can use it. I don't mind. says, according to Uber, much of the money goes towards paying taxes, local fees, and insurance costs necessary for the app to operate, right? And let's say I believe it. Why do you have an issue being transparent about it? You shouldn't. The lawsuit calls out the legislation overzealous, arguing that draconian penalties for non-compliance with the legislation goes too far. Under both laws, fines of $1,000 on a per customer and per driver basis are allowed, while the TNC Act also authorizes additional $100 penalties for violating other aspects of the law. I think that's fine. It's weird. It says it's overzealous. The obvious goal of this lawsuit is to stop you from doing it. Like if you didn't think it was overzealous, then it wouldn't be an effective lawsuit. It would just be the government trying to make money off of something you're okay with paying. Instead of being transparent, you would just be okay paying a smaller dollar value than this. It says Uber takes particularly issue with the sections of the law requiring rideshare companies to prominently display the payment information in a font 1.5 size larger than any other font on the screen. I love that. The company also argues that the legislation selected metrics of rider costs and driver pay alone don't accurately portray how much Uber makes off each ride, then make it accurate. They're not saying you can only do this, it's saying you need to be at least this transparent. But to display what Uber makes off of each ride, but to display what Uber says is a more accurate cost breakdown will require so much information on the screen that it would be unsafe. All right. Uber takes, let me just make sure, display the payment information in a font. Company also argues legislation selected metrics. So unless, all right, so the only thing I would say is unless Uber's being forced to show this after every single ride, I can understand why that might be an issue. That can still, doesn't have to be an issue, right? It doesn't have to be an issue. But I'm also okay with not seeing this after every ride, but having the availability to see it, right? I think that passengers should be able to see it after every single ride. I think that's fine, right? They're literally not driving. If you're a driver, I personally wouldn't want to see that clutter. I'd want to know about the next ride, or even what they really should do is, yeah, that would be a problem too. But just give me a way where I can click through and see it, right? And then I'd be okay with that. So I think I actually need to go and read the bill. Not doing that tonight, but I think I need to pull up the bill and read it because some of this, there's something here that I feel like I'm missing, and it's very possible this story is being written in a way that favors drivers and passengers, and there might be something in that law that is actually ludicrous, and I'm going to look for it, right? It wouldn't be fair for me not to look for it, not because I'm trying to defend Uber, just because my intuition, my gut says that there's something at play here that it's just not making sense. And until I satisfy that feeling, I'm going to continue to feel unsatisfied and blame my ADHD. It's just like, I guess, pictures of more details. Is this an example of what they want us to show? I don't know. Example of a full service fee breakdown from Uber. This is what they submitted with the lawsuit. All right, we'll keep scrolling. It says the service fee that drivers pay Uber is not the only amount that makes up the difference between what a rider pays and a driver's earnings. All right, we just covered that. I think we can stop here. Hold on. Let me make sure. Uber's giving specific pushback. Ugh, this is so disgusting. I gotta read it. To know every item in the service fee after every ride on a single screen will lead to tiny text and way too much information for drivers who may already be hitting the road to their next destination. All right. So that sounds a little reasonable depending on like what the lawsuit actually says. The lawsuit contends, according to Uber, having to create this disclosure page would also delay deployment of the currently post-ride page that asks drivers to rate riders and vice versa, which is important for safety. Okay. This disclosure page would take about 14 seconds to load, Uber adds, compared to the rating page, which is instantaneous. According to the lawsuit, such a lag could contribute to safety incidents on the road. All right. I can agree with some of this. I can see Uber's perspective now that they've broken it down. Glad I didn't skip this part. It says, additionally, Uber argues that the weekly summary sent to each driver showing their earnings, various fees and taxes that make up the service fee and the total amount customers pay in 1 week is a more accurate picture of rider pay versus driver earnings than would be seen on a ride-by-ride basis. I don't agree with that, right? I don't agree with that. That's because Uber intentionally does it to where things even out over a longer period of time. But I don't think that's how it should be, right? If I think it should be I think it should be both, right? I don't think this is an either or conversation. I think we should have access to that per ride and access to that weekly, and passengers for sure should have access to that. I don't like. I'm as the more I'm reading this, I'm not even sure if passengers are included in this. The government designed these disclosures to shame Uber as a driver earnings by making them appear smaller than what they are relative to Uber's revenues. The lawsuit says, on the rider side, Uber argues that passengers already get receipts that explain where their money went, so the disclosure requirements are not necessary. I want to see that for myself. I haven't taken an Uber in a really long time, so I don't even know what they show passengers. Just trying to look for an example of a receipt from Uber. Okay, so this is not adequate. I'll try to blow it up for you guys. So this is what it looks like. It shows the trip fare, $38.81. It shows what goes to the Black Car Fund, the TNC assessment fee, wait time, toll surcharge. It doesn't show anywhere here. Anywhere. What goes to the driver versus what goes to Uber. Anywhere. Nowhere here does it show that. So no, I don't accept that response from Uber. So it says Uber claims unfair burdens, but drivers aren't buying it. Uber's lawsuit argues that drivers could be tipped less because of the laws as well. There's that, like sometimes I just read something and I'm not immediately able to put my finger on what it is, but I just like immediately felt very slimy. It was a very slimy thing. Uber's lawsuit argues that drivers could be tipped less because of the laws. Here's how that's translating in my head. Passengers might not tip as much. No, I reject that idea. Passengers would be more likely to tip if they knew that drivers aren't getting as much as like the passenger's paying, right? If the passenger is paying $60 to go somewhere and the passenger thinks the driver's getting $50 out of that $60, they're going to feel less inclined to tip versus if they paid $60 and the driver only got $20, right? Way more lopsided than like that's what's happening currently. After like what the driver is taking a very small portion home compared to everything else, sometimes 50%, right? If the passenger knew that the driver was only getting 50%, they would feel bad for the passenger and tip more, right? If it was a scenario in which drivers were making majority of the percentage, 80%, they might not tip as much. But that's not currently what's happening. So no, I reject this point too. They're really grasping at straws. The disclosure page would be first and could take about a dozen seconds to pop up. Okay, so it says riders may not wait that long and may forget to tip or choose not to tip at all. The lawsuit suggests. Further, Uber would have to disable multiple tipping options, including the option to tip while on a trip, because it would be prohibited from providing any option to tip until the mandated information is available and it is not until the trip is complete. There are workarounds for that. That sounds like BS. They're just looking for reasons here. And people tip days after trips end. Like I'm not concerned about that. Like Uber's trying to make it seem like they're here protecting us. We want this law. Uber's trying to speak on behalf of people who want this law. Right? They're saying they're trying to protect us from ourselves. You know, it's such a weird take. To meet the requirements of the law, rideshare companies would also have to tell drivers the aggregated mileage and time of each task when the task is first presented to a driver. Okay. Currently, Uber splits that information into legs, showing time until pickup and time once the passenger or food item is in the vehicle. Uber says the current screen gives drivers more information than an aggregate measure, but Colorado's new laws won't allow the extra information to be included without creating a cluttered and therefore unsafe screen. Figure it out. I'm not accepting that, right? Unless you, what Uber should have done is create fake examples with what the law is asking and show what it actually would have looked like. Like without show and tell, the arguments just aren't going to push forward as much as you think it will. Finally, the lawsuit takes issue with the new requirement that Uber estimate how much drivers may need to deduct from their income in taxes. No one cares. Oh, wait. Hold on. All right. This actually might be red flag. This might be the only part of the lawsuit I might side with Uber on. It says, finally, the lawsuit takes issues with the new requirement that Uber estimate how much drivers may need to deduct from their income in taxes. Yeah, I don't think Uber needs to do that. Uber is not a tax advisor and does not want to run into trouble if the estimates are incorrect, as circumstances vary on a person-to-person basis. Okay, this is weird. This is the only part I'm not going to agree with. Even though we all get the standard mileage deduction, I've seen people not use it correctly. Right? Like, it's not, you're not, what is it, 65 cents, 67 cents this year? You're not losing 67 cents per mile that you drive in depreciation. It's not it. And if you are, you should do something else. Your actual expenses should be less than the deduction. And it should be, my average expense per mile is like 20 cents. It's about a fourth. And what makes being a rideshare driver profitable to those who can make it profitable is that it's a tax shelter, right? For every dollar you make, you're allowed to be exempted from paying taxes on 67% of it, right? Because the government's assuming that that's your expense ratio. But that expense ratio also considers like trucks, construction trucks, like expensive trucks. And then it gets applied broadly across all Americans. I personally drive one of the cheapest cars to operate. It's a Prius. And because in my market, I believe using the cheapest thing possible to make the most amount of money is going to give me the biggest tax haven. That's why I do it, right? And every year I put out a video showing my taxes. I show you guys how much miles I drove, how much money I actually made and took home, how much money I actually spent on expenses. And then I compare it to what the tax deduction thinks I should have made. And so, again, I'm not talking from my tailpipe. I have videos out there where I show what I know what I'm talking about. I do not think Uber should be required to estimate taxes for independent contractors. I think that as an independent contractor, there are some burdens that you just have to learn, deal with yourself. You need to be okay with tracking your own business, right? In fact, I made my own spreadsheet. I'll show it to you real quick. I made my own spreadsheet that helps me track my own business. I don't feel like this would be similar to where if you're an independent contractor and you work for a construction site, that the construction site should have to tell you what your taxes might be. No one does that. And if they do it, it's great, right? But like they shouldn't be forced to do that. Right? So this is my spreadsheet tracker. It's not up to date. I didn't put all of my income in here for January yet. But I always track my mileage. I'm starting to track my door-to-door time. I track all of my expenses. I haven't finished putting in my income. So the only thing that's missing from here is the income. That's because I can always go through the Lyft app and do it. But whenever I go and buy gas, I put it in here like immediately, right? So I know what my expenses are. And my mileage is up to date. Every time I drive and stop driving, I update my mileage based off of my odometer readings. And if you want access to this, you can become a member and you got access to this. I'm working on releasing the 2025 version, but I know so far this year, and I haven't put in like my insurance and things like that, but my biggest expense is going to be gas. I don't have a car payment because my car is paid off. And just for gas, right? Nothing else. I haven't put car wash. I haven't put insurance. Just gas is 8 cents per mile. 8 cents per mile. And that's personal and business, right? Because I separate my personal. I drove 649 personal mileage. And then my business mileage is 1,463. And the mileage write-off is 67 cents, right? I even have it here to where it shows you what your estimated taxes are based off of the mileage deduction, right? Of course, all of my income isn't even in here yet, but it shows my estimated taxes for the income that I have put in there is $144. And it shows my true hourly rate after all that like consideration. I don't think everyone's tax situation is going to be so different that I actually agree that showing estimated taxes on a broad spectrum is going to be confusing. And it does open Uber up to be liable for information otherwise. So, all right, I think 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3 I disagree with, and then 2 out of 3 I do agree with. But this does show me that I need to actually pull up the bill myself and go through it. I'll probably do that next stream next week because that is a little unreasonable. So it says Uber also argues that Colorado has placed an unfair burden on the company to create different mandatory screen flows that are only required in a single state, increasing the risk of glitches and the cost of ongoing maintenance. Solution to that, Uber, we all want this. I want it. It says driver advocates say the rules aren't overly burdensome, except that one rule that I think is overly burdensome, and are designed with a specific purpose in mind. These transparency laws are about fairness, giving drivers the information they need to understand their earnings and letting riders see where their money goes. Uber's decision to fight these basic protections in court shows that they care more about protecting their profits than supporting the workers who power their platform. I agree with that. Nice. So it says a Co-op Colorado, a rideshare app owned by drivers and designed to compete with Uber and Lyft, went live last fall and complies with the requirements of the new laws. If they can do it, you can do it. You have way more money than they do. If they can do it, you can do it. Now let's see what you guys are saying in the comments about this. So Ron says, Uber better not shoot themselves in the foot and make their stock price plummet. I've been buying more Uber stock over the past 6 months. You should stop doing that. One of the stories we're talking about today, you know what? First of all, let me say, not tax advice. I'm not giving you tax advice. But I think that it is not a good time to be doing what you're doing. Well, it's one of the, we'll talk about it next. I believe it should be like in the next set of stories. And we'll pick up the pace here a little more. I do want to go driving at 5 a.m. So I want to go to bed at a reasonable time. So I'm going to start picking up pace. GG Pro says, as a business, is important depreciation can cost. I think I understand what you're saying. I think you're saying is knowing what your depreciation important. And here's what I'll say. If you plan on selling your car, it kind of matters. I think that the best money is earned by driving your car into the ground, right? So I paid $12,000 for a Prius and it's already made its money back, right? I've already made more than $12,000 after expenses. So there's really not much of a point in me calculating depreciation. Like depreciation is like experienced the hardest when you have a new car, which you shouldn't be buying a new car for Uber and Lyft. So you can calculate it if you want, but if if I were to sell my Prius right now, I probably, even if I get $6,000, right? Fake numbers. Let's say I bought it for 12 grand. I'm selling it for 6. It's a $6,000 depreciation on an asset that has made me maybe $40,000-$50,000 since I bought it already. I don't like, it's not as big of a deal as people think it is. And a lot of people are misrepresenting the mileage deduction as mileage depreciation. And those are two different things. So that's what you really want to be aware of. If you want to calculate it, that's fine, but you need to figure out what your actual depreciation is. And to figure out what your actual depreciation is, you would say, okay, I bought this car for $20,000 with 0 miles on it. And then when I drove it 10,000 miles, it dropped to $10,000. And then you do math to figure out how much value your car has lost per mile that you drove, right? And every mile that you drive it is going to lose less mileage because you lose majority of your depreciation in the beginning of owning a car. So it's if you want to pay attention to it, you can. Just don't confuse mileage depreciation with your mileage deduction. Two separate things. Ron says they used to show how much Rider paid in the app like 4 years ago. Interesting. So I'm not gonna do it now because I want to go to bed soon, but I need to chase down some past examples to corroborate with what you're saying. Ron says that transparency is one of the reasons why I only drive for Uber 10% of the time. So you're saying that Uber is not as transparent? I think that in our town, Lyft is better. That's just what I believe. I think that, all right, no incentives, ride per ride, I think Uber pays better. Incentives, I think Lyft gives better incentives. They give it more frequently, but I will say Uber's incentives have a higher cap. Like Uber surge bonuses go up to like $30, whereas Lyft goes up to $15. But I think that Lyft has tools that allows us to take advantage of bonuses, right? If Uber is surging $20 and Lyft is surging $15, I'd rather use to stay within an area with Lyft to pick up 2 quick rides that have those $15 on top of it than Uber to try. It'll take longer to find the same rides. So it depends on where you are. And of course, the platform that's going to give you more information is probably going to be the information people prefer taking. C. Smith, first time talking, says Uber shows the IRS that the driver makes more than double what they actually get paid. They make it seem the driver review the insurance cut. I know what you're talking about, especially on their tax documents, but that's on us to make the deductions. But yeah, you're right. It's all a I want to say transparency game. Yeah, so we'll call it. It's just a transparency game. It's like they're making it seem like they're being transparent when it makes it look like the driver is making a lot and Uber is making a little. But they're not playing the real transparency game that just shows the truth. So I agree with you on that. Neil says, bro, you are the best. No. You are the best. I appreciate you. Thank you. C. Smith says they forgot to mention they also own the fake insurance companies. Okay. All right. I appreciate you for knowing about that. So I discovered this a couple months ago, and I still don't understand how this is not like in the mainstream gig media sphere. Uber owns their own insurance company, right? Let me say that again. Uber owns their own insurance company. And I'll of course prove it because, that's what I have to do. I think it's called Alika Insurance, right? Yeah. So let's put in who owns Alika Insurance. There it is. Uber Inc. I discovered this when I was looking at one of their financial earnings. I put it into some AI PDF reader where I can upload a PDF and I can ask the AI questions and it'll only show me results from the PDF, right? And that's when I learned that Uber has I wanted to, so what I was looking for is I wanted to try to figure out how much Uber is actually paying for insurance, right? So I put in like insurance. how much is Uber paying for insurance? And it's like, it wouldn't tell me. They don't include that in their financial report. But then I kept seeing Alika. And in the report, it didn't say who owned it. It wasn't until I pulled out that insurance company and then I looked up who owned it, and it's Uber, right? So I think what C. Smith is getting at is Uber is trying to make it seem as if insurance is a big cut of what's happening, which is true. I don't disagree with that. There are mandates out there to what they have to do, but Uber does own its own insurance company. Now, Uber claims that the reason it has this insurance company is to offset by self-insuring instead of having to pay other companies to do it, right? It should, in theory, be cheaper for Uber to self-insure than to have to pay for insurance from somewhere else, because when you're paying someone else's insurance, you're paying for the administration fees as well. So Uber can just save on those administration fees. So I think that in theory, that's okay. The problem is it creates gray area where Uber can take advantage of it, where Uber can play both sides of the ball and say, hey, we're paying a lot of insurance and we think it's disgusting. But what you don't know is that some of that insurance money is coming to us. We don't think that's disgusting, right? Now, I'm not saying that's what they're saying. I'm saying that it creates the gray area in which we can't confirm. So, and I think that you bring up a good point that Uber might want to make it to where they don't have to be transparent about that, because it might lead to more people realizing what's really going on in the background. That could be it. It really could. It could be multiple other things too, but that could be part of it. So shout out to you for knowing that. I don't know if you know that because you've seen a video I've made about it or something, but that's like even other gig tubers who I cross paths with, especially on Twitter, go follow me on X. They don't like, this doesn't come up in conversation enough. So I'm happy you brought it up. I'm proud of you for being aware of what's going on out there. So Ron says, Uber won't show what the rider really tips. We have to trust Uber is being honest. Yeah, that's not okay. Like, they've literally stole money from us before. All right, so we're going to move on. Let's see what we do next. All right, so since Ron brought up that he's been investing into Uber and I want to convince him to change his plan, we're going to start talking about self-driving cars. I always do a segment on self-driving cars. After the segment on self-driving cars, we'll talk about electric cars. And then we'll only have one more story after that we'll cover. Okay, so this one kind of made me upset. And not for the reason you think it will be. This one says, Uber's CEO says drivers have about 10 years left before they will be replaced. Okay, I haven't read this article, right? So what I like to do is I like to give my viewpoint sometimes before I actually read the article. And I think that the most important thing I can say to counter what's probably going to be said is I don't believe that the worst thing that can happen to rideshare drivers is being replaced. I believe the worst thing that can happen to rideshare drivers is not being able to make enough money to where rideshare just isn't worth it anymore, right? I'm not a fatalist. I try to be reasonable. And anytime I have a conversation with other drivers, especially drivers who I think are very, very intelligent, even the owner of the rideshare guy, it's not Sergio, even the owner, I've had a small back and forth with him, and I'll show you, it was on Twitter. They believe that drivers don't have anything to worry about for a while, right? Here, Uber is saying it's 10 years. I don't agree with that in full, right? I think that drivers in cities where self-driving cars exist have something to worry about today, right? They like to say that, oh, Uber does a bajillion rides worldwide every year. I'm like, that's fine, right? Drivers worldwide probably don't have to worry about it to the degree that drivers have to worry about it in cities where it's available, right? And we'll touch on some of those cities very soon, but we know two of them already. We know one of them is LA and the other is Phoenix, right? So even when I look at my YouTube stats and I look at the breakdown of where people are watching from, majority they are from LA or New York. I think LA is winning right now. So when I'm making content, I'm talking to people, right? And the rideshare guy, their roots are in California. So I'm assuming most of their people are from California too. You're telling people who live in California who have traditionally complained that it's already oversaturated, that they have nothing to worry about when it comes to self-driving cars. When self-driving cars are like, all right, we'll stop there because some of these articles are already going to co-sign what I'm saying. And let's just dive in. Let's just dive into what the articles are going to say. Rideshare driving was the most searched side hustle last year, garnering nearly 31,000 monthly Google searches per Creative Fabrica study. More than 7 million people drive or deliver with Uber alone every month. However, CEO Derek Hirsch, it's been a while since I've said his name. No, they won't let me read this. Hold on. Oh, it's just a pop-up. Okay. All right. Try that again. However, Uber CEO Derek Hirsch, oh my God. Dara? I'm not gonna mess around with it. Carl Shosh. Okay, I tried. Dara said in an interview on Friday that driving for Uber is only a safe gig for the next decade. Disagree with that. After that, autonomous vehicles or cars that drive themselves will take over the same routes humans drive every day. So I can see that, right? So I want to specifically point out this nuance here. He's talking about when being a driver will no longer be necessary, period. And you also have to understand that Dara is going to see this differently from us. We see this from when this is no longer financially viable to do. That will happen long before we are totally replaced by self-driving cars. You see the nuance and the difference, right? For us to be 100% replaced might happen in 10 years. I can see that. I can kind of agree with that time frame. But self-driving cars can replace 20% of us and decrease the pricing algorithm to the point where it's no longer financially feasible for us to drive. That's what matters. How much will self-driving cars impact our ability to earn? That's what matters. It's not about being replaced. It's about when is this no longer financially economical for us, right? Take self-driving cars out the picture for a second. We already had markets complaining that it's oversaturated, right? I think Waymo's planning to drop 100 cars in a particular city. We'll talk more about it later. If Waymo dropped 100 cars in my city overnight, that is something to worry about, right? We're talking about cars that will drive almost 24/7, right? I would rather 100 human drivers be dropped in my city than 100 self-driving cars, right? Uber has already said that in Phoenix, on the Uber app, when a passenger is offered a self-driving car, the Waymo, or a human, 50% of the time, they're picking the Waymo. I'm not making that up, right? I'm not making that up. Waymo gets picked 50%. Uber CEO. All right. I gotta prove this now because I'm gonna seem like I'm lying if I don't. How often are passengers picking Waymo in Waymo, Uber CEO? Oh, I gotta find this now. I can't not find this. Uber CEO says passengers only pick self-driving car half the time. Okay, here it is. This is from, all right, they changed the title, which is why I couldn't find it initially. Bro. These pop-ups. Oh, it's behind a paywall. Come on. This doesn't work. Hold on. I'm going to find this. Here it is. This is not it. This is it. Yeah, this is it. So it says half of Uber's riders say no to self-driving cars, highlighting trust issues. This article is framed in a weird way, but half agreeing is the same as half disagreeing, which is huge, right? If Uber was an early player, I'm not reading all this. I'm just going to go to my point. So this is a direct quote. The most important factor is, can we make this technology safe? Can we build trust for riders? For example, in markets where we offer autonomous vehicles, half of our riders say no, thank you. And this was in an interview with Bloomberg where it was said. I'm going to repeat that. In markets where we offer autonomous, half of our riders say no, thank you. Half isn't small. Half of the people who are being shown a self-driving option versus a human option, half are picking humans and half are picking self-driving. So like I said earlier, it's not about being replaced. It's about losing out on profits, about it not being worth it anymore. We know that surges, bonuses, and things of that nature is largely like created based off of demand. And if self-driving cars can lower demand to a point where surges don't have to happen as frequently, it might not be worth driving Uber and Lyft. Maybe on special holidays where it's super busy, it might be. But day to day, which is when we need to make money as well, it's going to make it more of a part-time gig than a full-time gig. So I largely disagree with a lot of people out there that aren't worried about Uber and Lyft, or about self-driving cars in Uber and Lyft. And part of that is because it takes a long time to transition from one thing to another, right? It can take 2 to 4 years to get a degree for a job that's going to pay you better than what you're making now. And with people out there like pacifying people, saying that they don't have to worry right now, it doesn't make sense, right? Sometimes it'll be some of my rideshare friends who, they have Teslas. They'll sing praises about full self-driving and how the car can drive itself. But it like how great they feel about it. It's like when you talk about self-driving cars with rideshare, it's like, oh no, that's dog water. It's going to be very, very bad. And it just doesn't line up. It's like the technologies you believe so much in, it's like once we put it in this area where it's up against your current career field, you don't believe it. And that's dangerous, right? Because automation comes for all of us, right? It happens in different waves to different things in different times. And I believe that 10 years, if you wait 10 years before you pivot to something else, you would have screwed yourself over, right? And that's why I preach so much that drivers should, even if you want to be a long-term driver, you need to make sure you're in a position to that when it's no longer like viable for you to drive, you can switch. That's what I'm doing, kind of. I don't want to be a long-term driver. I want to be a full-time YouTuber. And so I've been using Uber and Lyft to pay off my debts. If I keep at it, nothing crazy happens, I should be debt-free, not including the house, by the summer. I'll have no student loans. I have 2 cars in my household. currently no car payments. We don't use credit cards. And if driving no longer becomes worth it, right? I will have the financial flexibility to do something else, right? Especially if I have the emergency fund, which we're not at that step. We have some money, but we don't have the dedicated emergency fund yet because all of our extra money goes towards paying off debt. But once that's gone, we build up the emergency fund. Once I have that, like I can go and work, right? If times get really hard, I used to be a Pizza Hut store manager. I can go and be a Pizza Hut store manager for $50,000, $60,000 a year and take care of my family because we did the math. We only need about $2,500 to survive, right? And that's gas, electricity, that's all of that. That's us existing in not lavishly, but in like minimalist, comfortable, right? That's where we exist now. And what is that? Let's call it $3,000. Multiply that by 12 months in a year. That's $36,000 a year. I can, after tax, I can do Pizza Hut store manager and be okay. That's not what I want. No. But what I'm suggesting is that you out there as a driver, you should start adopting this mentality that today is the best day to make money with Uber and Lyft because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And that's kind of the mentality I try to go on with. I'm not perfect with it. Sometimes I slack off more than I should, but I'm racing to get to the point where I can cruise. And a lot of people are just cruising. And then when something happens, they're having to race against their wishes, right? They're not able to take breaks. They're not able to slow down. So that's really what my channel is about. So if you're new here, it's the first time you heard what my channel is about, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video too. And let's get back to the articles. So Dara is saying you fast forward 15, 20 years, I think the autonomous driver is going to be a better driver than the human driver. I agree with that. Dara told the Wall Street Journal, John is Stern at Wall Street Journal's, so many words for no reason. Dara said they will have trained on lifetimes of driving that no one person can. I'll repeat that. Dara said they will have trained autonomous cars on lifetimes of driving that no one person can. They're not going to be distracted, right? They'll probably always have some issues, but they're currently safer than human drivers. Currently. All right, so apparently we have a video clip. Let's check it out. Let's see what he's saying. Let's see what the snake is saying. I kind of like this. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so here are my issues right now. This whole entire article is written in a way that makes anyone who just reads the headline, we'll go back to it, think that he's saying that you have 10 years before it's not worth doing anymore. And after listening to what he has actually said, he literally said that over the next 10 years, we'll be experiencing the hybrid model, right? So that coincides with what I said about where there's going to be a point where the hybrid model is going to cause drivers not to make as much money as they used to make because the self-driving cars are there, right? I don't feel like that's an unreasonable take. It feels very reasonable to say that. And he's saying that after 10 years, there won't be a need for humans, period. And as rideshare drivers, we are going to feel the burn financially before that 10 years is up. As the expansion of self-driving cars happens and they cut into the dollars that we make, we are going to feel that before the 10 years. I think long before the 10 years. So I got to do a better job of, instead of reading people's opinions about what's happening, I got to do a better job of going to the opinion source myself and making a determination. Because the tone of this article is significantly different from what he just said. From a business perspective, I think that's fine, right? It's unfortunate that they want to wipe out drivers. But if I'm a CEO in his position, it feels like that's where the market is going. I understand it. Like I'm not oblivious to the fact that Uber is a company and they're going to look out for themselves. As a driver, it's unfortunate, right? And we'll have to do our best to deal with it. But we've seen this happen in different industries. It's just that driving is so hard to automate that's taken so long. But we've seen the automation of other industries already. You just have to learn to adapt. It's unfortunate. I'm not like praising Uber for it. It's like I understand that that's what they want to do, but as he said, he is trying to give us more opportunities to earn. It's just that delivering people is where the money's at. It's better than delivering food on most days, most cases, most cities. And these other opportunities he's probably adding, it's just not going to pay the same. So even if he's able to increase more things that people can do, I guess eventually what's going to happen is the introduction of automation is going to cause a price reduction or pay reduction for delivering people to the point where it's about equal to delivering food until they figure out how to get automation to deliver food in a way that's similar to how they have automation delivering people. So it's just what we have to watch out for. And I'm getting frustrated that people aren't preparing for this, right? If you take out a car loan, let's see what the average car loan is right now. Average car loan. Not even in amount, average car loan in years. So the average car loan term is 68 months. I'm not doing math in my head. 68 divided by 12. So that's 5.6 years. We'll just call it 5.5 years. If someone goes out and gets a new car, which you shouldn't do, and they take a loan out for that car, which you shouldn't do, and they're going to use it for Uber and Lyft, which you shouldn't do, they have that car payment for 5.5 years. 5.5 years. The average car payment is $700. 5.5 years. If you think Uber and Lyft will be paying enough in 5.5 years for $700 car payment, you go ahead and listen to these people that think self-driving cars aren't a problem. One of those companies just announced that they're expanding to 10 other cities. Let's talk about that one. We'll skip ahead and cover that one right now. Oh, before we do, I got this one. This is the one Ron has to see. I like Ron. He's here often, and we're not going to skip over this. I'm going to read this one for Ron and for anyone else who's invested in Uber and Lyft. And then after this, we'll talk about which companies expanding. This will touch on it, actually. This should touch on it. So it says Uber and Lyft shares tumble amid Waymo's expansion plans. Shares of ride-hailing giants Uber and Lyft fell sharply in today's trading session, with Uber going down 3.3% and Lyft dropping 4.6%. The decline in stock value is attributed to a recent announcement by autonomous vehicle company Waymo, which is owned by Google, which revealed plans to expand its testing operations to 10 new cities by 2025, this year, including Las Vegas and San Diego. I'm moving to Las Vegas soon, and I'm not looking forward to that. I don't want to deal with this. This news, shared via a tweet and an exclusive article with The Verge, suggests that Waymo, owned by Alphabet, is not only increasing its footprint, but also challenging the current ride-hailing market with its autonomous vehicle technology. While the testing vehicles will be manually driven initially, right? Even if they're manually driven, still a problem. You can argue that it's more of a problem, right? Like drivers go on Facebook, Twitter all the time and complain, oh, stop showing your earnings. All you're going to do is convince people to become drivers and drive in your city. Here we have people who are going to drop, companies that are going to drop, let's just say 100 vehicles overnight in a new market. You don't think that that's something we should be worried about? Interesting. The operation could potentially lead to the launch of a commercial robotaxi service, intensifying competition for Uber and Lyft. Waymo's approach to these road trips is to assess how well its self-driving system can adapt to different environments, traffic patterns, and weather conditions. This is what they do. They launch a pilot in a city. It starts with people behind the wheel to make sure everything's going fine. They collect their data, and when they're comfortable, self-driving cars. This is the blueprint for what they have done and what they're going to do. Waymo's product manager for expansion efforts expressed interest in locations that will challenge their system, highlighting Las Vegas' unique traffic and street layout as a test for the company's adaptability. So smart that they're picking someone hard to start with, because if they can figure out a hard city, it'll make the easier cities easier. So it's a better value for their time. They'll run into more problems faster, and the faster they fix those problems, once they distribute more across America, maybe the world, they won't have to deal with as many problems because their system is smart enough to handle it already. So it's pretty smart. The market's reaction reflects concerns over the potential impact of Waymo's advancements on Uber and Lyft's business models. Both companies have invested in autonomous driving technology as part of their long-term strategies, but Waymo's aggressive push into new markets signals a step closer to realizing a future where robotaxis could become mainstream. Waymo's plan to launch robotaxi operations in other cities such as Austin, Atlanta, and Miami further underscore the threat to the current ride-hailing services. So we have Vegas, San Diego, Miami, Atlanta, Austin. They're in Phoenix. They're in LA. I don't know if I said LA already. Last year's tests in various US cities focused on winter conditions, while this year's theme is generalizability, aiming to minimize the need for extensive testing before launching services in new locations. I just said that. They're focusing everything they have on a hard place so they don't have to do that when they go to easier places. I've not read this. It's my first time reading it. As Waymo sends fewer than 10 vehicles to each city for a couple of months, focusing on busy commercial districts, the company is also engaging with local officials to ensure a smooth testing phase. So 10 cars isn't crazy. While testing, they probably won't be eating into the market share too much, but they will be sometimes it takes humans a while to like accept something, and seeing these on the road, being beside them, is gonna create a smoother transition than if they were just to drop them all there all at once and probably cause some panic. But so we'll see how it goes. The goal is to gain enough experience to determine how well Waymo's vehicles can generalize their driving capabilities, particularly in terms of perception systems and local traffic nuances. The market movement today reflects investor sentiment that Waymo's progress could pose a significant challenge to Uber and Lyft as the autonomous vehicle landscape continues to evolve rapidly. So another thing I want to point out, with drivers who don't agree that there should be some concern for self-driving cars and like how it will reflect on your pay, if Wall Street is concerned, you should be concerned, right? Like following the Wall Street trend is not a bad idea. If Wall Street is losing faith over Uber and Lyft because they're having competition from self-driving cars, you should be aware of that. Even Uber is aware of that, which is why they've said that they want to be a partner for self-driving cars. Again, not making that up. Did not make that up. And I'm going to co-sign it with the fact. Uber wants self-driving cars on their platform. We already see this in Philadelphia, right? Waymo does have their own app. Some cities just use the Waymo app. I said Philadelphia. I meant to say Phoenix. Phoenix, you get a Waymo through Uber, right? So both Uber and Lyft have actually came out and said that they're planning to partner specifically with different self-driving cars. A dedicated number of WeRide vehicles will be made available to consumers using the Uber app. After launch, when a rider requests paying qualifications to the app, they may be presented with the option to have their trip fulfilled by WeRide autonomous vehicles. Uber wants to be the hub where these different companies, Uber even said that when Tesla launches their self-driving car platform, it would be great if they could work together. Self-driving, Tesla, Uber. CEO quote. Uber CEO Dara has said that he would like to partner with Tesla on robotaxis, but that he has doubts about Tesla's plans, right? It's smart for Tesla to do their own thing. Uber understands the threat, and Uber wants these people to be incorporated into their platform so they can get their cut. But some of these platforms don't want to do it that way. So Uber understands this. Wall Street understands this. Google, who's investing money into this project, thinks it's viable, understands this. Why are we, the biggest group that will be impacted by this, not grasping this or choosing not to believe it? I don't know. Absolutely insane. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Let's go back to the article. So that's yeah, just be careful where you're putting your money. I'm not gonna tell you what to do with your money, but what I would do with my money is I would put it into the S&P 500, and that's it. I wouldn't be doing single stocks because things can turn in a second. Things can turn in a second. So we're going to stick to self-driving car news for a little bit. Waymo is coming to LA freeways. We'll just watch the news on this one once this ad is over in about 10 seconds. All right, it's not even something to read. Here we go. Bro, what? Come on. I hate this. Three more seconds. This is not what I clicked on. I don't know what happened here. Hold on. I must have accidentally clicked something.
If you're a YouTuber and you want to save hours managing your library, you
don't advertise to me right now. Neolink says, I think if you have a full-time and having a sales job, of course, it depends on how you manage your time. First time, thanks to you, I may find the answer. Good. I think Uber and Lyft is a stepping stone into something better. And I think people should use it that way. If you want to be a long-term driver, that's fine, but prepare your step. That's what I would say. So let's see what this is saying.
Says it will test its cars on some LA freeways, including on the freeway. Driverless cars on the freeway. Waymo says it will test its cars on some LA freeways, including the 10, the 110, 405, and 90. Those tests will use employees as passengers to start. Waymo does hope to eventually expand to the public. The Alphabet-owned company says using freeways could cut some trip times in half. Waymo has been doing these tests in San Francisco and Phoenix since August, and we know they're on surface streets.
And have had a great safety record. We really don't hear about any major problems with the Waymos, which is pretty amazing if you think about the technology.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I've not yet to try one of these myself.
Money from travel blogging.
But I'm interested in it. And I feel like from what I've seen is people are apprehensive about it until they try it, and then they only want it, right? There are benefits and negatives to it, but I feel like it's only a matter of time. People are becoming more and more comfortable with this technology. They are safer, right? The problem is people want to know that if they get into an accident, it was their fault. And even if there's less of a chance of getting into an accident, people just want control. But statistically speaking, these things are safer. So this is a big one. This is a really big one where I think I'm just gonna read the headline because I can't even put it into words. It says Tesla will launch unsupervised driving in June 2025. That's what Musk says, right? So take it with a grain of salt. I know that Musk usually delivers eventually, and he's usually late, but this isn't something to ignore, especially if you live in Austin. Tesla will launch an unsupervised, no one in the car robotaxi service in Austin, Texas in June 2025, Elon Musk said in an earnings call on yesterday. We just want to put a toe in the water, make sure everything's okay, put a few more toes in the water with the safety of the general public and those in the car as a top priority. The vehicle will be part of a fleet owned by Tesla and not customers' personal vehicles. Musk has previously promised Tesla customers would be able to add their own vehicles to a Tesla network for ride hailing. Let's focus on this bit for a second. Tesla is going to be competing directly with rideshare drivers in Austin, Texas in June. Right? Directly. Now, I will say, I do like Tesla's overall model where drivers will be able to have their own fleets on their networks. That's cool. That gives rideshare drivers something they can step up into if that's something they want. But as we are seeing, Tesla's going to have their own fleet. Now, if they have their own fleet indefinitely, are they going to have their own fleet with other people's personal fleets? I don't know. But this year, 2025 in Austin, they are going to be directly competing with Uber and Lyft in a way that human drivers can't compete with. We can't go on the Tesla network and drive with them, not yet. Right? So if you're in Austin, you should be worried, right? And we'll continue this article. But I don't have it on the docket for today, but I know that even Lyft self-driving Austin. Austin seems to be the battleground right now for where all these companies want to put their self-driving cars. Right? This is from Lyft's blog. No, this is too old. This is not the one I want. I know I read it. We'll do for the past year. Because Lyft has a new partnership. I'm trying to figure out where it is. Okay. This is from January 7th, 2025. This is for Uber. So sorry, not Lyft. So it says customers in Austin, Atlanta will hail Waymo vehicles in the Uber app, right? So, right, we haven't even talked about all the places Waymos are going to show up. Atlanta is one of them. I'm very interested in seeing that one. That's the closest city to me. But it's Austin too. We have Waymos coming to Austin. I know Lyft is partnered with some companies. I'm not sure if they're going to Austin. Waymos are coming to Austin. Tesla's coming to Austin. And I follow someone on Twitter who drives in Austin, and he currently complains that he's not making enough money, right? That he's having to do severe cherry picking to even be comfortable with the money he's making. But these same people that I'm interacting with constantly don't think this is a threat. It's so weird to me. It's like, I just don't see where the lack of like connection is. It's so weird. The vehicles will be part of a fleet owned by Tesla and not a customer personal vehicle. I read that. So it says they will be available for paid trips and will arrive without anyone behind the wheel, Musk claimed. Over the years, the Tesla CEO has caught a lot of flack for repeatedly promising that fully autonomous vehicles were just 1 or 2 years away and then failing to deliver. Now, the timeline of Musk's promises has been shortened significantly. Initially, he said before 2027. So now we're supposedly getting it 6 months before 2026. This is not some far off mythical. This is not some far off mythical. This is not some far off mythical situation. It's literally, 5-6 months away. In its letter to shareholders, Tesla said its customers have cumulatively driven over 3 billion miles on full self-driving, supervised, the company's advanced driver system as of January. Tesla says that FSD is a precursor to fully autonomous vehicles, but the company warns customers that they need to continue to pay attention to the road since the system does not make the vehicle autonomous. The company also claims to have increased AI training compute by over 400% in 2024. They built some new factories. The company recently posted video of dozens of Model 3 and Model Y vehicles without human intervention. The vehicles have no human safety driver inside them as they are seen driving a 1.2-mile route on Tesla's private, enclosed factory roads. Musk said that unsupervised Tesla vehicles will soon be operating similarly at its factory in Texas. So here's the video. So there's no sound here. These are Tesla vehicles that have been produced. They're coming off the assembly line, and they have trained them to drive themselves to to be staged for loading, which is pretty cool. Some people's jobs went away with this one, but from a technological standpoint, this is pretty cool. From a rideshare self-driving standpoint, this is a closed track with predictable directions for the car. So I wouldn't use this as real world reflection, but this is still hard, right? That they got here was hard. And if Tesla, who has built rockets, reusable rockets, if I had to bet who's going to figure out autonomous driving, Tesla's up there. Google takes the safe approach with their Waymos. They've been doing a lot of testing, and they have a lot of real world data to use that relates to rideshare, whereas Tesla has real world data, yes, but not in the way that relates to rideshare. It'll be interesting to see who becomes the leader here, right? With Elon being Trump's best friend in the world, I do expect that he will be able to bypass a lot of regulations. President Trump is for deregulating things, whether you agree or disagree. It's not the point of this conversation. Historically speaking, Trump likes to deregulate and has said he will deregulate. So that might give Musk the ability to go out and expand faster, which isn't great for rideshare drivers, unless you believe that rideshare drivers have nothing to worry about, which I don't know why you would believe that. Bloomberg previously reported that Tesla was in conversations with Austin's Autonomous Vehicle Task Force about launching a robotaxi service. So they're already talking to people in Texas about it. To be sure, Tesla's approach to autonomous driving differs significantly from most other companies. The automaker only uses cameras to power its vehicle's perception system and does not utilize LiDAR as a redundant sensor. Waymo does. The company also releases selective safety statistics that have been criticized for lacking details. I'm not a fan. And FSD Supervise has many shortcomings. It struggles with basic perception issues like wet roads, sunlight glare. FSD sometimes fails to recognize motorcyclists. A 28-year-old motorcycle owner was killed outside of Seattle earlier this year by a Model S driver who was using the driver assistant feature. And I expect to see more articles where self-driving cars have done something that we wish it didn't. Statistically speaking, it happens less with the self-driving car. The only problem is we don't know who we're going to blame, right? If I go out and buy a Tesla just for the purpose of self-driving, and that Tesla hits someone and kills them, who's liable there, right? That's probably the biggest thing that will stop me from joining the autonomous vehicle race if I'm able to afford a car that can drive itself, right? It's something that I'd be interested in, but I will not play around with it until I'm sure that I know what happens if the car that I bought kills someone. I'm not going to jail over this stuff. It's just no. So that's probably the thing that will hold me back the most. So we'll see. And I don't think these questions will be answered until they start happening. So Tesla has been testing a robotaxi service with employees in the Bay Area since last year. The vehicles arrive with safety drivers behind the wheel who are ready to intervene in case anything goes wrong. Musk has said he expects to roll out a paid ride-hailing service in California and Texas starting 2025. This year, guys, this year, right? California already has self-driving cars in LA. We have Waymo there already, and we're going to get another one there. But for some reason, some of the drivers there aren't concerned. Tesla is not currently licensed to operate a commercial autonomous ride-hailing service in California, which makes it seem like they are in Austin. In the call, Musk said he's confident Teslas will release unsupervised FSD in California and additional parts of the US later this year. Musk revealed the company's sleek Cybercab earlier this year. It was a cool event. All right, so yeah, I don't know, man. Just we'll keep reading these self-driving car articles, and hopefully I'm able to convince some people to take the financial steps to protect themselves, even if I'm wrong, right? I want to be wrong. I want you to make as much money as possible, but I want you to take the safety precautions to protect yourself for when I'm right, or if I'm right. Sounded a little pretentious of me, right? Okay. I think that I'm gonna read one more article. This is gonna be the last one for the night. It's going to be short read. And it's just about the fires that happened in LA. Kind of old news, but the title is Uber drivers helped evacuate LA, but were left unprotected. And I want to see what that actually means. We'll find out together. Drivers for ride-hailing apps helped evacuate people during the recent wildfires in the Los Angeles area, but by classifying such workers as contractors, California's Proposition 22 excludes them from state rules that require companies to protect employees from workplace exposure to smoke. Okay. Jamie Jordan could work at almost any job in California and be protected by state rules that require companies to give their employee high-quality masks to block wildfire smoke. But James Jordan is an Uber driver. That means he's a contractor, not an employee for the multi-billion-dollar tech giant, and unprotected by California's first-in-the-nation regulations on worker safety related to wildfire smoke. Immediately, this is not the article I thought it would be, and I think that it is the I think it's the responsibility of an independent contractor to have their own mask. I think it's the responsibility of anyone that lives in California, where this has commonly happened year after year, to have their own mask that can save them from the smoke related to forest fires. I'm gonna start there, right? I already don't like where this article is going. We'll continue. Ride-hailing companies like Uber and Lyft are now part of America's disaster response. Both apps have offered Los Angeles residents free rides to evacuation shelters during the deadly fire that have torched a large area of the city, a service they also offered ahead of hurricanes and other disasters around the country. Okay, so I'm going to soften my stance up a little bit. I don't think Uber and Lyft are required to provide masks here. I think that it would have been great if they did, right? If you're offering passengers free rides, you should do something to help save your drivers, right? To help make them have nice, long lives, right? It doesn't mean drivers shouldn't do what they have to do to protect themselves. That's very important. But when Uber makes a decision, right? This goes back to that tug of war between Uber, passenger, and driver. If Uber is only ever trying to do right by the passenger, it's going to make drivers will start to feel malicious towards Uber, which we already do. So I think that they missed an opportunity here. So I'm softening my stance. Drivers, forget drivers. You live in California, you need to have a mask. Start there. Dial back a little bit. It would have been nice if Uber helped them with some mask or something, or whatever it is. It says, but the drivers who venture into harm's way often have little gear or training to protect themselves or their riders from extreme weather. The rights of gig workers were also weakened by a California ballot initiative that was upheld by the state Supreme Court last year. The result, Uber and Lyft are exempted from state wildfire smoke protections for workers, and the companies don't have to provide drivers with sick leave if they fall ill from inhaling wildfire smoke. Okay, it would be cool if they had that, but it probably, the more protections Uber has to provide is likely the less they're going to pay you straight up in order to pay for these protections, right? So that's part of it. And as an independent contractor, I'd rather receive the largest portion of the bill or of the pay so that I can make the decision on what I want to spend, right? Because if Uber is forced to do it, they're going to have to spend a certain amount when I, as an individual, might be able to figure out a cheaper way. We've seen this with insurance. Uber has literally said, we will take less money from you if you have your own commercial insurance. That's because the commercial insurance they're forced to have is significantly more expensive than the same commercial insurance I can get personally. I can qualify for the same commercial insurance for about $600 to $800 a month, and that would be worth it. If Uber said that they would pay an extra $1 per mile if you had your own commercial insurance, right? And I gotta co-sign this because I don't want you guys thinking I'm making things up. Uber offering to pay more if you have your own commercial insurance. So this is from, I don't know through the entire thing. We'll see if we can quickly find it. This is from the Rideshare guys. Let's see where they talk about insurance.
And you're getting paid $300 with a $6 bonus after the ride. So
Here it is.
All right. Well, let's move on and let's talk about today's title, which is Uber going to be offering to pay for a commercial insurance if drivers are going to have their own? And not that slide. That slide. There we go. Yeah. So this has been kind of circulated through when it comes to people sending this to us. So we appreciate that very much.
Look at this shit. Sorry.
Cursing. So here it already says, you would have earned $9,633 extra based on the trips in the last 12 months, right? So even if insurance costs me $600, 6 times 12, that would work out to be cheaper than the $9,633, and I'd make more money. That's what I'm talking about. It's like sometimes like being able to do things ourselves will save us more money than someone forcing them to do it. Like in New York, they get paid sick time. That money comes directly from a fee from their rides. So they're making less money per ride to qualify for sick time, when if Uber just paid them without the forced sick time, they'd make more money overall. So it's like, it's not, trying to force Uber and Lyft to do all these things is not in the best interest of everyone in the long term. It sounds great on paper, but when you look at where the money comes from, because money comes from somewhere, it's not that great all the time. I know I sound like a hater, but it's because I just want to take as much money home as possible. So it says, we help their brand and we serve the community so they can stay out of this hazard, but we don't get anything for putting ourselves at risk. And part of this is that I think that you can't, Uber and Lyft are like have their hands tied on surges, but I guess it's free ride, so it doesn't even matter. Jordan said on a recent Saturday afternoon, okay, Uber and Lyft each say their drivers provided about 10,000 rides to evacuation shelters in the first week after the wildfire started. In response to questions about what Uber was doing to protect its drivers, a spokesperson said it was having an ongoing conversation with drivers, couriers, and merchants to listen to their needs to find the best way to support them. Lyft did not respond to requests for comments. This is like Sergio from the Rideshare guys. He has contacts over there, and this is exactly what they said. So should they do something? It would be cool. Should they be forced? Not if it takes money out of drivers' pockets. And drivers out there, you live in California, you gotta protect yourself, man. You just do. It's been good. It's about 9:30. I'm gonna go. I gotta get up at 5 a.m. to go and drive and make some money. I'll see you next week. I'll try to be here Thursday, 7 p.m. Until then, go ahead and make some money.